So I'm recording that way these flights. His will be recorded as well. They'll be loaded to the same Google Drive system, and I'll email you a link to it. So you'll actually have 2 classes. You can review 2 different teachers to see if there's something different in the different classes. So it works out well for you guys. I'll leave them on there for probably at least a year, so you have access to them for a while on there. I think last year's are still sitting. I mean, until my drive runs out of storage, there's no reason to delete it. I do size them down so they're a little bit easier to stream on a device or whatnot. So it may not be the best visual aspect, but it gets you ready to go. All right, so in this class, it really is to get you through to private pilot written exam. Now, for argument's sake, I always wonder, how do people take the written with never flying? Because a lot of what you learn to understand it, you kind of need to see some flying aspect of it. That's not to be said. I've seen many people come in with the written done and then never flown. I'm like, how in the world? Well, it's because the book you have is the test prep. It is the FA test bank. Well, it's probably about 80% of the actual questions are in there. There are multiple choice, A, B, and C. Like each question we go through will have a number. That question is word for word that question. If that number pops up, it's that question, A, B, and C, in the same order with the same answer. There's no surprises. So I'm not going to lie, back in my early days, I could memorize fast. I spent the day before and I memorized the book. I memorized the answers. It was crazy. If you gave me A, B, and C, I could tell you what the right answer is with no question, because they're always different. So just by practice. I did it 1 page at a time. So I have all hundreds on all my writs. Couldn't tell you what was on them. But I remember, because I went to college, so we had 30 people all on the same day. And by the time she got to the end, I'm standing there going, I'm done. She's like, what? 5 minutes, all I had to do. So you can do that. Now that is not as easy to do anymore because they have doubled the size of the test bank and have hidden questions. Actually, if you see a question you don't remember, and you can memorize it, a lot of these services, I don't think they pay you, but they really would love to know, hey, what question did you have that you didn't see in our book? And they just keep creating one. So you will just have to take the exam. Once you do and get a 70% or better, it's valid for 24 months to the end of the month, 2 years basically. Everything in aviation, almost everything is monthly and to the end of the month. So like if you took it on the first of the month, you actually get almost 25 months worth of validity to it. Because it would be valid to the end of the month 2 years later. So it almost gets you a full. If you took it January 1st, it'll be valid to, like this year, if you took it January 1st, 2023, it'll be valid till January 31st, 2025, to be used to take your actual flight exam. So 3 exams.
Locally?
No, God we wish. And they keep closing places to take your exams, written and flight. Flight-wise, we have 3 examiners in town. The only place in the country you can find 3 all at one airport. We're super lucky. 2 of them are good friends of mine. 1 I boat and camp and ski with, but I don't send many people to him. Super nice guy, but he's hard. I don't know why he's so hard. He had like a 75% failure rate. I'm like, Ryan, what the heck? Oh no. And then Brad I've known since I started flying. He's actually a year younger than me and went to Purdue. I use him regularly. That's who I sent him to. He's tough, but his oral is very tough. His flight's a joke. I love his flights. They're very quick. I mean, you should, if I did my job, you know how to fly. So and he does not really get, and if you do screw up, it's pretty much, well, but the oral's tough. He gets on tangents and weird places. But I always said it makes me better as an instructor, finding these weird stuff he comes up with. And then a lot of this ground school is you at home. If you did not do this course, you would be expected to just study this at home. We do ground school with flying, but it's directly related to the aspect of flying. Not all of this would we ever come close to covering. So you're kind of on your own. All of you that got kits got access to our full system. So I had the online videos and a lot of other things that went with it. But without this course, you are basically homesteading, doing that on your own. doing this course, it's great because we're gonna sit down and explain. We're literally gonna go from page 1 to the end, go through almost every question. It gets monotonous when they're the same question, but the answer's different. But we're gonna go through it, explain them, make sure you know the right answer. I suggest you highlight them or mark them as you go through. And then the other book that came with it, the Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, did you get that one too? Okay, I'm sure you got your kit just recently, so just want to make sure everyone had what they needed. You had an old kit.
Yeah, I had an old kit. I downloaded some PDFs from the FAA website.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
I don't have the 2023 book though.
That's okay. I'm using the 2022 one from last year. They don't really change. You may see 1 or 2 different questions, but like I said, once the question's in there, it's the same question. So, but we'll go through that. The goal is that, like, this was the first one. I sent you the things to know chapter 1 and 2 we're going through. So your goal is at home is to look through the chapters before the class. So you can start learning yourself, and then, then we'll be adding to that. If you come dry turkey, whatever, it's your class. I mean, you're here, you pay for it, we're gonna go through it. But if you do that and keep up and study, so as we move forward, you're still studying in the back, you should be able to go take the written right after that. I would suggest it. I will have to endorse you. I just found out that Terre Haute has a testing center. It was Louisville, Louisville, Indy were the only 2 in the area. Louisville closed because testing center, the FAA subcontracts everything. So for millions of dollars, PSI gets to administer the test. Well, they charge $175. They were giving the testing centers who has to employ someone for 3 hours and have all the equipment. All PSI does is give you a login to access a test. They were giving them $55. They took it $20. They said, we're just going to give you $20. You can't even pay someone to be there. And a lot of the organizations started contacting the FAA, and FAA says their contract says they have to keep one place open the whole country. That's the government for us. Yeah, so they can close anything wherever they want, as long as they keep one place everyone can go to. I don't think it's going to stay this way. It's just is what it is. Generally, what happens is places that already have people that are employed and sitting in an office anyway, they do it. Our partners with our college program is the one up in Greenwood, which is Indianapolis. But I just found out that Terre Haute, one of our students is going to Terre Haute to Indiana State University. I guess opened up a testing center, so that's not too bad. Shoot, just make a day of it, take some friends, go take your test, go to the mall, I don't know. It's what we generally do. You can also fly to the places. You're still, if you're a student and you're across countries, I've had a few, the weather worked out and we chose to fly up there instead of drive. Greenwood's 50 minutes, 55 minutes in the trainers, so you'll have access to do that. Okay? So that's kind of the format, the layout of what we'll be working with and going through. If you have questions, please ask. Because I'm sure if you have the questions, someone else probably does too. And go from there.
It says it includes 5 online practice tests. Is that unlimited attempts at those 5, or is that
no, you get
log
5,
in, you get 5 tries?
3, but Sporties have unlimited, I think.
Okay.
The one
It's
we
unlimited
use.
if you pay like $15 or something. I think you only get like 5.
The one it might be 5.
I didn't want to burn any of those 5. If you
Yeah.
really only get 5.
Yeah.
Hold on
Now,
to it.
with that, they give you 5 because you bought the book. All of our students for practicing for the written exam, and it would be very worthwhile for you guys. It's called Sporty Study Buddy. It's $15. I'm gonna pull it up here so you can see it. Once you do $15, it is really cool. It's like flashcards.
That one?
That's the one. Has flashcards. You can pick little sections and just say I want that, and it just I want 5 questions. I'm sitting at lunch. I just 10 question test. So I do anything random. And so the flashcard style is one of the best styles to go with it and do it because it. Like I said, a lot of your written is just going to be raw memory. They're going to give you 3 hours. If you really study and just keep going through the test preps or other ones, a lot of those you'll get in. As we get through this, you'll see that I will tell you, memorize this, mark this as memorized. There are literally questions with the wrong answer. The right answer is not there. Yep, it's the wrong answer. So you just gotta know that. A lot of the equations and like when we get to cross-country navigation, you can't get the right answer. With the tools that you're provided, it's not possible. We can get, like if we're trying to find a trip, we can determine the time or distance within, 5-mile window. And they got like 31, 31 and a half, 31 and 3/4. I'm like, I can tell you if it's 30 or 40. I cannot determine that. You get into takeoff distances. The chart has little lines that are 1/16 inch apart, and each one's 200 feet of gap. And all the distance options are within 10 of each other. You're like, what the? It's not even possible. And someone was said because everyone's getting it right, they had to make it harder. So they made it a memorized question. So we go through those. I'm going to try to find it. So, sporty study buddy. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, so it actually shows up, Private Test Prep, Sporty Study Buddy, it's $15. Absolutely recommend it if you're struggling. I mean, you're going through this class, so that helps drastically, but that in between is even easier than taking that fat book and going through it. Super, super useful tool. One of the downsides of doing this class early and not being in flighting or near the end is a lot of this info you'll need for your oral exam. You will do this whenever, as long as it's 2 days prior to your actual flight exam. Flight exam exists with an oral first. Got to get through it to get to flying. So it is not straight up question answer. They use the term scenario based. So he'll give you a trip. Did you get a trip for commercial?
Yeah, it was to Atlanta. You let me check, I picked the airport.
Wasn't it like for a game or something? Normally it
For a
says,
game.
oh, you're taking me and my luggage.
It was
and-
it was a Tigers game for my instrument and then a Braves game for my commercial.
So they just kind of throw that aspect. So a lot of your questions won't just be what's Class C and what's the VFR. It's like, oh, we're along this route and the weather starts closing in, the clouds are coming in. What do you do? Oh, well, my guidelines say I gotta be here, here, and here, so I can go to this altitude because the guidelines are different and I can manage that weather. And okay, can you really go that low? Well, regulation says I can fly 500 feet over the people. So as long as I'm 500 feet over people, and the one airspace you can clear of clouds, so as long as my head is out of the clouds and belly's 500 feet above a person, I can keep flying. I've been known to push that one, except for within the tent to land. Hey, I'm landing 200 miles from now, 200 feet still works. I have ran really low for many miles to get somewhere, because when it's a bad storm, I don't go in and I dip under. All right, so this is your book. I'm gonna go to right up to not page 1, but where the questions start. So if you want to open to chapter 1, get the actual questions rolling. Sometimes you gotta help me, I wonder. I get off topic. Or maybe it's on topic, just off in my own world. Alright, so first up is basic aerodynamics. Okay, I'm not going to give names, but I just had to do a ground school today who was supposed to have a check ride, had no clue what aerodynamics were. Did not understand it. So let's not be that way. Don't frustrate me. So, when you really understand how lift is created, from our perspective, we're just putting a drawing together, how it's created. But when you're in that airplane, you can understand why things in slow flight occur. Why do I do it? That's the fun part, is you're taking the knowledge and then figuring out how that actually works within the airplane. You're doing stalls and slow flight and steep turns and things like that. It's like, let's slow down. I literally did these next questions earlier today, and just got the dumbfounded look. His check ride's on Tuesday. Uh-oh. All right, so the first step, the way they break this book up, which is really nice, is it starts with just like a simple outline. This isn't going to teach you what you need to know, but it gives you the highlights, so that you can actually, as you're looking at this, you go, oh, wait, let me run to the pilot's handbook. You can use the back index and go, oh, let me search this, and it'll be a little bit more involved if you need it. Okay, so the big thing about a wing is it creates lift. The really, really big thing about a wing is lift is not from the bottom of the wing, it's from the top. First thing you gotta learn is we fly by a suction of air. We are sucked up on the top of the wing. We are not pulled up, pushed up by the bottom. Okay, we are held up through Bernoulli's principle and Newton's third law and a few other things that hold us up. So the big thing about, let's use the right Apple pencil, the thing to remember, is key terms. When I start asking questions as you're a pilot or a student, it's good to use terminology. Oh, the front of the wing. No, that's the leading edge. Leading edge is going to be the farthest, furthest point to it. Okay, point. Trailing edge, obviously at the back. When we start looking at flaps, you'll notice that as the flap goes down, it's still known as the trailing edge. It's the very back tip of that. Flaps are interesting. Aerodynamically, the way we look at the aerodynamics, it makes absolutely no sense, but it works because they definitely give us more lift, but the way they say they move the chord line is quite interesting. So, and I just brought up the next term, the chord line. So when you draw a line between the two, that is the chord. Depending on the airfoil, it doesn't matter. It's a straight line, tip to tip. Okay, it's the chord line. Then you get into finally relative wing. Okay, so you have a wing. Okay, a wing moves forward. Relative wind is the opposite direction of the movement of metal. Fiberglass, but the movement of the wing. Wing's flat, moving this way. Relative wind is this way. The wing's pointed up, but it's still going this way. Relative wind is still this way. Opposite. Okay? So, and then when we're climbing, obviously flip. If you're in a climb going this way, relative wind is here. When you take the difference between your relative wind, I don't know if there's a diagram. No, it uses an airplane. When you take the difference of that chord line and your opposite relative wind, you get angle of attack. Okay? So when you, I brought my little airplane in here. Okay, so when you're like this and you're moving this way, okay, chord line, relative wind, angle of attack is going to be low. Okay? As you increase angle of attack, what's got to happen, and this is where I get to draw. Okay, now my drawing and writing is sketchy, so no grading here. Tip to tail, generally an airfoil is curved, top and bottom. Most trainers or basic aircraft are going to be either flat or slightly curved on the bottom. Aerobatic aircraft that are designed to go upside down would want the wings symmetrical or curved exactly the same on both sides. Okay? Airflow has to move across the wing. It comes up, and this is just the easiest way to think about it. Air molecules. Always remember, air does not move. Okay, air is still. Air is not moving in this room. You can tell. When we move around it, we are cutting through that air. We are making air molecules split. But the little buddies, these little buddies, little air molecules, they like each other. We, in our wing, is slicing right through them. We're a knife. Okay? So when we slice through that, here's the problem. You've got an air molecule going this way, air molecules going this way, but what have you taken? You have made a gap in the air. Okay? Air is a mass. And the molecules join together. It's very loosely joined, but when that wing goes through it, you are splitting molecules up. You're taking space that should be air. So what's going to happen? You have air molecules loose out here, they're spread apart, but where you are pushing together, they all get tight. Okay? Of course, the ones underneath got to bypass underneath. Now, at the end of the day, Frank 1 and Frank 2, they want to hold hands again at the back edge of the wing. So now they got to travel a farther distance than this guy here. So what's the guy on top going to do? He's going to have to move faster. Now, what really happens is you're compressing here. As you're going out, this wing is pushing all these, compressing these molecules real close to the wing together against the ones that are spread. And what happens when you push something? It's compressing it. What's it going to want to do? It's going to want to move. Since we don't have a box, we're holding it in, it's going to move, and it's going to move this way. So two ways to really think about whatever works best in your mind. Two friends trying to meet, one has to travel farther, so he's going to move faster. Or you're compressing these air molecules and they're scooting across. Once you start creating movement across the top and accelerated, that's known as lift. That's a vacuum. The suction of air is created. These air molecules, because they're moving, bind to the metal or the wing, and you have the other molecules here that aren't moving. So you actually have like non-moving air molecules, moving air molecules, and then non-moving steel molecules or aluminum or fiberglass. So that little gap right there where things are moving, so it holds us in the air. Okay? As you increase speed or angle of attack, we're working with angle of attack, so if we take this wing, and now it's going to get interesting, and we move it more an angle like this, okay? But your relative wind remains the same, so that, we've got a higher angle of attack. Now if I zoom in a little bit technically here on the, like, there's the front edge of the wing, right? So when it's hitting here, the molecules only got to start here and go around. But when they hit more down here, they got a little bit more farther to go. And as they come around the back, they got to make a bigger direction. They got to go up, over, around, and down. Okay? Bigger change. Bigger air. It's really a bigger distance. Because now instead of going straight through, there to there, they go up, around, and they get brought all the way down there. So therefore, we are pushing them farther, creating an up, down. That up and down creates more acceleration, which means more lift. Now, at a given speed, okay, speed is a constant in this scenario, as you increase your angle of attack, airflow is going to be accelerated quicker down the top of the wing, therefore getting us more lift. Okay? To fly level, our planes with 2 people and fuel run about 2,000 pounds-ish. They weigh about 1,300 pounds empty, put a couple hundred pounds, 2 people, 20 gallons of fuel at 6 pounds per gallon, that's 120 pounds of fuel. We don't load them down, they'll hold 50, we only run about 20. Heavier airplane is, the more angle of attack you need to hold it in steady flight, therefore it flies worse and slower, and when you do stalls and slow flight, a lighter airplane is going to just be more docile and be better to fly. It's going to take off quicker with a lot of variables, a lot of positives to run. We don't need 5 hours of gas to go fly for an hour. We'll run 2 hours. It's 10 gallons an hour, so 20 gallons gives you 2 hours. General flight lessons are an hour to an hour and a half. So we have a 30-minute reserve, and we're just going out about 15 miles. So, even if we're having a great day, we're like, oh, we're getting low on gas. It's 5 minutes, and we're back to the airport. No big deal. All right, so as angle attack increases, what are we doing? We're accelerating that airflow. Now, here's a problem, is when the angle attack gets too great, okay, and the airflow has to go around, it can't make and flow this far. It just can't get there. Too big, too abrupt of a change. And the air molecules stop making it to the back, and they break off early. Now, what happens if they break off early? You get a suction of air back here, known as drag. Okay, that creates drag. Also, that disruptive airflow starts to hit the tail back there, and you start to feel it on the controls. But more importantly, your lift, is now falling off because you're not getting a full wing's worth of lift. Now, the crazy part about this, as you increase your angle of attack 10 degrees, 15 degrees, which we have no indication of that, like what our angle of attack is, because we're pulling the nose up, but if the plane's going up, our angle of attack would still be low. We really don't have an indication of angle of attack. One of the new gauges in one of the advanced aircraft, they have an angle of attack indicator. I have no clue how it works, but I haven't really played with it. But the point being is, the crazy part is, we're not even creating lift on the full section of the wing, but as you increase angle of attack, it's breaking off farther and farther off the back of the wing, but what part of the wing it's using is getting more and more lift, more and more suction. Because of that abrupt change, bigger angle, the bigger that has to go around the curve, it just shoots faster and gets us more lift. At a certain point, it gets so far, it cannot make the turn. It's trying, but it just breaks off and goes off, okay? When that occurs, airflow breaks off kind of way up here. It's not making it. You know what that's gonna be called? Stall. A stall, okay? It's crazy. You go from maximum lift to negligible lift like that because it's going this far and then all of a sudden that far. It's just instantaneous. All wings, all airfoils, okay, so we take our wing on our Cherokees, we fly Piper Cherokees. You take that, you put on any airplane, it always creates the same amount of lift at a given airspeed and angle of attack. Algebra, A plus B equals C. Angle of attack plus airspeed equals lift. If you're at 100, at 10 degrees angle of attack, that wing, no matter if it's stuck on a car or the airplane, it will create that exact amount of lift at that airspeed because the airfoil is designed. Now, that being said, it will also stall at the exact same angle every single time. Almost every wing stalls at 18 degrees. That just seems to be the number where it can't make it over the backside. Even more than that it goes. Now, horsepower and aero in jets and, you know, the big extra 300s where the plane's this big and the engine's this big, you're just pulling it wrong on thrust. That's a little bit different story. But from a real normal flying airplane, this is the basic factors, okay? Now, if you are wanting to use speed as a variable, it's the same thing, A plus B equals C. So if you keep your angle of attack the same, but you want to create more lift, you could also speed up and go faster to maintain your altitude or your given lift. So how fast you are, you know, as you speed up, your wing is slicing through those air molecules quicker. So you know you're literally getting through more of them at a given moment in time. Therefore, you're forcing more of them to accelerate, and therefore you create more lift. Okay. So that is some very basic aerodynamics. I'm gonna go a little farther into drag. We'll just see how far we get. Then we'll go into the questions, because we already got the drawings up here. Okay, so we've talked about leading edge, trailing edge, chord line, relative wind, angle of attack. Okay? Now there's drag that comes from airspeed. There's drag that comes from lift. One is called parasite drag and one is called induced drag. Okay, when we are creating lift, a little farther down the drawing, when I am creating lift off my wing, okay, it's chord line. Lift is always perpendicular to the chord line. All that lift you create will always end up pulling you straight perpendicular to the chord line. So, as we increase angle of attack, where's the perpendicular to the chord line go? To the back. So your lift that you're creating is no longer pulling you straight up, it's actually pulling you backwards. So that's why when we are slow and we want to hold our 2,000 pounds, we need higher angles of attack. That's also why we're slow, because we have a higher angle of attack, it's pulling us backwards. So your thrust is not only trying to haul the weight and just the raw drag of metal sticking in the air, which is your parasite drag, it's also fighting its own wing that's pulling it back. Higher it gets. So that's why when you pull up, you slow down. We actually, the term you'll get drilled in your head is pitch controls airspeed. Because if you pull up, you slow down. You slow down. Gravity does the same thing. There's a lot of things that bring it into play.
So like VX and VY are different.
That's totally different. That's, yeah, well, yeah,
That would make sense, right?
it could. That has more to do with just rise over run numbers in geometry, is what those are getting at. So as we increase, we start calling it, and that's induced drag. Okay, so if we're at 100 miles an hour and we're at 5 degrees angle of attack, we're going to create let's say that's level. But if we were to go to 10 degrees angle of attack, but we're still right now at 100, we're actually gonna initially see a climb, because what's our lift gonna do all of a sudden? It's gonna jump. We're gonna get all this lift, so it's gonna pull us up. Okay, and then as it's pulling us up, where's the airspeed gonna go? It's gonna start to bleed off, because even though you get that change and all that extra lift, all of a sudden it's starting to pull you back, so it slows you back down. Okay? Parasite drag is just crap sticking in the air. We try to make the front leading edge as thin as possible. You got giant wheels hanging down there. Just the front of the cowling's a lot of drag. You know, we gotta cool the engine, so air goes through the cowling, gets shoved through the engine, and then out the back. It's air cooled. Well, that creates an air dam, because the air can't go in there and just freely exit out. So that creates parasite drag. When you're slow, parasite drag is low, because you're not going as fast, it doesn't hold you back. You're not building pressure against it. The faster you go, you're gonna increase parasite drag, but you're gonna reduce induced drag, because faster you're gonna need more angle of attack to hold the altitudes. So like cruise. That's why, like, we're all fixed landing gear stay down. As you get advanced, you can get rechargeable landing gear. Get those suckers sucked up, lose a lot of parasite drag, get a lot faster. We have one in Piper Arrow. That's basically what our rental plane is. Most people train in the trainers and then eventually aspire to go to that. Because the rent is more, but because it's retractable landing gear, it's got autopilot and cool stuff. If you're going to Chicago and back, it's actually cheaper to fly that one than the trainer, because it's so much faster. So it gets a lot less time on it. It's also what we do all our instrument training in right now. I don't really do instrument training. Trainers have kind of stripped them all to basic VFR. And it's $40,000 anymore just to have basic instrument avionics in the aircraft. It's getting so expensive for that. So because we do mostly private, that's what we have 3 Cherokee 140s, a Warrior, to keep those up. And then we have the Arrow for more of the advanced stuff. I do have a new light sport, but 100 hours on the cylinders and they corroded somehow. So they're in Australia for the last 8 months. $100,000 airplane I flew for 3 weeks. And it's been down ever since. Just sitting in a hangar paying rent on it. And they say it could be a year before I get them back.
It's not RV, is it?
No, a little Jabiru, J250. I have a lot of time in one. I've taught a few people, so I felt comfortable with it. Plus, it's been around a long time. Things like those. RV's a good airplane, but you gotta watch some of these fly-by-night manufacturers, because buying an airplane is one thing. Keeping it in the air is the hard part. That's why when I help people buy airplane, I'm like, well, let's look at what parts. How much are parts? How readily available are parts? Piper parts, there ain't nothing more readily available than a Piper part. That's why Cessna, everyone's heard of Cessna. Cessna loves their parts. Very expensive parts. So maintaining a Cessna is very expensive over a Piper. It's at least double the price. Every part on it. Shoot, I had a Cessna 150. It took them 22 hours to change a window on the door. Yeah, it was like $5,000. Cherokee window, it's like 17 minutes to swap out. Super simple. It's like 8 screws, pull it out, pop it out, push it in, put the 8 screws back in. Then take the door off, remove every rivet. Cessna loves their parts. That's how they make their money, off parts. You're gonna hear a lot of negatives about Cessna, a lot of positives, so just get over it. They put the wing on the wrong side, there's no reason to have it on the top. Number 1 aircraft to have mid-air collisions, Cessna 172. You have more mid-airs than any other plane combined, because you can't see a dang thing when you're flying. You can see the ground, oh, you can see the ground. I'm like, that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the other planes that you're about to hit. Alright, so let's see if that's enough info to get us through some questions. The last drawing on here has an angle of incidence, and that's just in a set. You want your airplane fuselage to fly level, it's flat, while you're in cruise. So angle of incidence is how much angle of attack does it take for that airplane at like max weight to hold itself up. So they kind of mount that wing at that angle, so therefore it naturally has, you know, let's say it takes 3 degrees angle of attack at cruise speed. So plane's sitting, the wing's sitting at 3 degrees already, if the fuselage is flat, just so you're not flying around looking like this. The Zenith, we were talking about small airplanes, the Zenith 701 or 601 is the worst. There's no angle of incidence. When you fly, I mean, you can't see nothing. Level cruise, you're staring at clouds. It's the dumbest. I fly those. I try to refuse to. I know a few people with them. I hate it. There are certain airplanes I just despise to get into. Alrighty, so now the next one's going to say refer to figure 1. Very first question is figures. That is the extra pamphlet in the back of your book. I do not have it on the iPad, so well I do, but it takes like 10 pages to go through. I have extra books over here, so we can look at it. It doesn't even come out. It used to come out. Now it's attached to the book.
Oh.
What's up with that? Yours came out.
Yeah, $9.
Yeah, 2023 they made it part of the book. Well, that's just stupid.
So
Now you gotta
now-
flip back and forth. Yeah, just tear it off. Is that one right there?
Yeah, it should be.
A lot of these I can, just by the question, you don't even need the figures. Because when it says the acute angle A is the angle of, now if you look at that picture, angle A is the angle of attack. Which really is the only angle that you could use in that question. It's the only one we have, so angle of attack. And if you're concerned, right answers can be down at the bottom. And if my book is drastically different from most of you run in 2023, let me know. I didn't, and then I'll just buy the 2023, but I don't think it's very different. Now as we move on to the next one, you notice how above this question said all, and this one says all SPO. So if you are a airplane applicant, so this is all applicants, but there can be private pilot in airplane, helicopter, gliders, lighter than air, which is hot air balloon, gyroplanes. So as long as say all or air, that's a question you need to worry about. If it doesn't, there's going to be a whole section of a chapter that's just gyroplanes, so just skip right over that. That won't be part of your exams. So here it is again, same thing about another way to say it. That term angle of attack is defined as the A. It's the angle between the chord line and the relative wind. Okay, that's what we've been working on. Next one, the angle between the chord line of the airfoil and the relative wind is known as angle of attack. So I said, you're just getting a couple different questions of the same one. And you'll see a lot of that throughout this book, because they'll just keep asking the same one. Sometimes it's like 5 pages long. I'm like, okay, enough pages. Let's move on. Yeah, I bet it is. The term angle of attack is defined by the angle between the chord line and the relative wind. Now notice these say SPO, so those aren't going to be applicable, so we'll skip right past those. All right, the axis of rotation and the 4 forces of flight. Okay, so we're just going to use these different diagrams to get us a basic feel. So longitudinal axis is the long one, tip to tail. Spinner to rudder, longitudinal axis, okay? So you have a longitudinal axis. When we get to stability, I hope it's not yet already. I hate stability, makes no sense. Stability will be memorized questions. I can get us through some of them, and some of it's just like, I don't know, I didn't go to that much college. But the longitudinal axis is easy. Now what rotates us around it? If we rotate around it, that's going to be our roll, which is known by our ailerons. Okay, so where's the ailerons here? Neutral ailerons going to be straight. When you do ailerons, they're opposite. One will go up, one will go down on the opposite side. The one that goes up, now the easiest thing is when we do intro flights. Like, see, this goes up, it's going to push this wing down, that one's going down, it's going to lift that wing up, roll to the left. It's not actually what's happening. What do we learn? Trailing edge, leading edge. When you lift an aileron up, it actually reduces the angle of attack of that section of the wing. So that section, whatever the aileron, our aileron's about, what, a third of the wing or so? That third of the wing, as that aileron comes up, it's known as spoiling, it's spoiling lift, it's starting to reduce the angle of attack of just that section of the wing, creating less lift. So it's gonna wanna fall. The other one's going down, which of course is changing the angle of attack again, giving us more angle of attack, okay? And that's gonna give us extra lift. So one's dropping lift, one's adding lift, and that's your roll. If you had an aileron brake, as long as you had the other one, it wouldn't roll as fast, but it would still do the purpose. It would, you would have one wing going and forcing the other one to move. But we move them, and when you rotate them, you will actually notice that they go down more than they go up. It's very easy to kill lift, very hard to create it. So as they go, if they will go up a little, while the other one's going down more, to get the same, but they're trying to equalize whatever one's taking, one's giving. But they actually have to move different to make that happen. Spoiling or lifting it up, and you can see the drawing here, that would be that one. So relative wind's there. If it's neutral, there's your angle of attack. You go down here, you're actually creating a negative angle of attack. Whereas when the one's down, you're lifting the cord line up, providing more angle of attack between the two of them. So that's all that's doing to around our longitudinal axis. Okay, so you roll around it. Stability of the longitudinal axis, I was kind of saying, but what makes it move, okay, would be the elevator on the tail. The elevator is just a mini wing on the back. It flies the tail, because with balance weight, you got a lot of weight pulling that back. You need something in the back holding it balanced. So it's just a little tiny wing. And depending on the type of airplane, we have what's called a stabilator on a Piper. It actually, the whole thing moves. The whole elevator moves up and down as one big movable wing. Whereas conventionally, it's going to be a fixed wing that has a back that tips up or down. So they call that getting really big. If it's non-moving, it's a horizontal stabilizing fin with an elevator to move you. If you have a full moving one, it's called a stabilator, a stabilizing elevator. Combine the two, stabilator. And we have a stabilator. Now, a few reasons the Piper has a stabilator. It's a short airplane, so if you just used an elevator with a fixed, it would need a lot more big moving section to move it, because it's so short. It's not way out there to move you, needing a lot of mechanical advantage. It needs a lot more. So that's one big reason they put it like that. The benefit to a stabilator is it trims out in cruise. Like when we're in cruise, we can pretty much get the plane hands off. It'll pretty much hold altitude. If you're working on a conventional horizontal stab with an elevator, they tend to hunt a little bit. They don't hold perfectly steady. And that's because the full flying one has the ability to fly and move. Whereas the other one is not so. It's stuck, and then you got the thing in the back that flaps. Cessna has that. But we have, either way, if we are flying along and we want the nose to go up, what do we want the back wing to do? Go down. So when you pull up, it's actually tipping the back wing to a negative airflow, pulling the tail down, rotating the nose up. Right? You push down, vice versa. You can guess which way the elevator goes a lot and which way it goes a little. It'll go up a lot more than it'll go down. Actually, down is almost flat. Doesn't give you much down. Because gravity does the same thing as well. And unless you're in an aerobatic airplane, then they fly upside down, so they need it to move the same either direction. But ours will go a lot less, on the elevator. I don't know if this gets into anti-servo tabs. We're not going to get into it unless it does, because it's much, much easier standing at a tail section to see it than it is to try to draw it and explain it. And literally, if we get on it, I might make them bring an airplane, one of our planes right back here, so we can look at it.
Somebody in the back on the stabilator with it.
Yeah, we call it the trim tab,
yeah.
but it's actually called the anti-servo tab on a stabilator, and it makes sure sure it's another reason why the plane will trim out better. Disadvantage to a stabulator is the landing. It can be a little bit, as it gets slow, you can lose a little bit, it gets a little bit touchier in a sense. When you have the longer tail in the elevator, it's a little bit more linear, a little bit more consistent for a landing touchdown. And then and it depends on what plane you're in. Our Warrior, which is a newer version, they're both the same airplane, just one's a little older, one's a little newer. The little newer version of the Warrior is a pain in the butt to land. It's probably by far, and it sucks, I mean, our guys learning to land in it just take forever. Are you flying that? Yeah, sometimes it's just best to jump back to the freaking 140 sometimes. It's good. 140 is a short, stubby wing designed for actually high lift, low airspeed. The Warrior came out in the mid-70s. Runways were bigger, so they were able to take a longer wing. It's got this giant wing on it that takes more room to get up and out. But runways were longer. The perk was it's supposed to level off and go faster. It's not so much. It's a little underpowered. It burns less gas. So what perfect trainer? Burn less gas, less to operate. But it has, we're going to get into ground effects on this lesson. That long giant wing has so much ground effect, it can be a nightmare to manage. But once you figure it out, the good news is once you figure it out, you pretty much land anything. And you can't land it hard. Always land soft. For some reason, it does not hit hard unless you put it on the nose. All right, so we were talking about the rudder moving the launch, or not the rudder, elevator moving the longitudinal axis. Now we've got the lateral, kind of laterally between us. Okay, so based on the rotation, what rotates us around it? The elevator. Okay, and you know that's kind of where your center of gravity is going to be, where the center of weight. So it has a rotation point. And the stability that moves it would again be your roll, your aileron stability to control that. And then you have the vertical axis, which is just running top and bottom. Super easy. And you rotate or twist around that one. The rudder on the tail, the vertical fin. I don't know which drawing is a vertical fin, maybe this one. And all of them you can see just go left and right. And guess what? A vertical fin looks like a wing. So when you're turning the fin left and right, even though it's not on a vertical or a horizontal plane, it's on the vertical plane, as soon as you do that, there's airflow running down each side. So it creates lift. So when you're deflecting that, you know, one would say, oh, I'm putting it over and it's forcing the airflow. No, it's the rudder now creates lift going this way or a lift going, you know, so it's straight, it's not creating anything. It's just running across it, not moving, it's equalized. As soon as you move that tail section left or right, you go this way, you got airflow coming in, you've moved the cord line, created a lift negative pressure on the other way. So, moves it around. But once you start getting that in your mind about how you're moving pressures, or the vacuum, the suction, you can start to get a better feel when you're in the airplane how some of this is going to relate. Okay? And of course, the stability of the vertical axis is kind of weird because it doesn't really have one. The yaw effect doesn't really have a stability number or a factor to it. It's just always, if you get rid of, if the tail falls off, you're screwed. The thing will just go like, you can't. It's just, there's too many factors trying to turn it left and right that are counterreacting, and that sucker back there equalizing it manages everything. Trust me, I fly RC airplanes. You lose the rudder, it's a baby's going in the ground. There's no fixing it. Actually, they say technically, if you lose one side of the elevator, you can rotate it and turn it into a V-tail and kind of make it down.
I was thinking about a bonanza.
Yeah, the V-tail bonanza is an interesting. Sits like this, so that it's an elevator and a rudder at the same time. Why would you do that? Does anyone want to, other than you, because you probably know?
Because it looks cool.
Fork,
That's why they buy them.
fork-tailed Dr. Killer right
Yep.
there. I have like 500 hours in a V-tail. It's actually numerous. One that had way too many power that they actually double built. It had, this aluminum was this thick to keep the sucker on. They fall off. But why would you do a detail and not a normal one? We've actually talked about why. Parasite drag. Okay, we have 3 generally equal sized fins. Take one off, put them at an angle, now you have 2 equal size. You get rid of the drag off of one whole surface. The problem with the rudder is, like, the way it works, one goes up, one goes down, and that kind of works like ailerons, but it's interesting. At all the turbines, it gets what's called a Dutch roll. You get in rough skies, you get sick, because it's going like this, like, all the time. You gotta sit there and hold on the pedals and kind of fight it. In smooth air, it's great. In turbulence, in IFR, it's really interesting because the gauges are, you can't track nothing. Everyone liked them because they were fast. You know, same motor, same airframe, you're gonna jump 10 knots just by that drag. 10 knots on the same fuel means cheaper to fly. But, yeah, you know, the V-tail, like, ended in the 50s. Very rare to find anything, like, I never realized how old the Bonanza V-tail was. The one I flew was like 1949, I didn't even realize it was that old. But it was great, it burned 11, 12 gallons an hour and 150 knots, which is quite fast. It's very hard to go over 140 knots without a very big motor and a lot of gas. Most planes are, you know, are down on 140 or less until you hit 300 horsepower and 17 gallons an hour. So, alright. For aerodynamic forces, we already talked about lift, right? We know where that comes from, but the opposite of lift is weight. So to fly level flight, pretty straightforward. Lift's got to equal weight. I was using 2,000 pounds earlier, you know, to create that. Thrust